He is the reason why football is called the beautiful game. Edson Arantes do Nascimento, known to all since his childhood as Pelé, is the only man to have won 3 World Cups as a player. And the style with which his teams played served as an inspiration ever since for the Brazilian teams that have attempted to follow his formidable legacy. And across the world, where Pelé's star power took the sport to new frontiers. One of the greatest players to have ever taken the field, Pelé's impact upon football was immense. As Stockholm, Sweden prepared to host the 6th World Cup in the middle of 1958, the whole world was going through a time of awakening. USA President Dwight D. Eisenhower was establishing space agency NASA in a bid to expand Earth's horizons. The plastic hula hoop had hit the market. The Beatles were making their first recording under their original name, The Quarrymen. And the football world was waking to the magic of a 17-year-old known as Pelé. Fast forward to 1970, man had walked on the moon, but the USA space program was already being cut back. The hula hoop fad was dead. The Beatles had made their last record. Pelé, though, was still going strong. The star of Mexico's World Cup, and the first and still the only man to win 3 World Cups. Pelé, full name Edson Arantes do Nascimento, is the greatest figure in football history. At 17, he arrived in the world game like a beautiful burst of light. And he shone all through the sparkling 60s and for a good portion of the 70s. 767 official goals, 1,284 including friendlies, in a sport where 500 makes you a legend. He scored 92 hat-tricks, 4 goals in a game 30 times. 5 goals in a game 6 times, and in one outrageous match in Brazil in 1964, he scored 8 goals. When he retired, he became an ambassador, a kind soul. Sure, he had an ego, but how could he not? He remains as revered by the generations who never saw him play as he is by the old men and women who can recall his genius. And when that genius is recalled, it's the World Cups through which his story is told. In June 1958 at the World Cup in Sweden, the world of football was in desperate need of something to smile about. The game was still rocked by the tragedy in February that year when 8 Manchester United players and 12 others were killed in a plane crash. The youth and verve of Brazil became the representation of hope, and the player who epitomized the beautiful game was Pelé. It would be wrong to say that Pelé's arrival on the world stage was a surprise to all. He was already a star in Brazil, having made his senior debut for Santos at the age of 15, and at 16, becoming top goalscorer in the league. But in those days, the football grapevine was not quite as sophisticated, and to those outside of Brazil, there was skepticism about the ability of a 17-year-old to play a significant role against the best in the world. They were wrong. Pelé's first World Cup was almost over before it began. He injured his knee in a pre-tournament practice match and missed Brazil's first 2 matches. While he was recuperating, coach Vicente Fiola received a report from the team's psychologist, who said Pelé was too young and not mentally ready for such a big stage. Fiola's response was famous. "You may be right, but you know nothing about football. If Pelé's knee is ready, he plays." These fascinating pictures from Brazil's training base shows how much a part of the team Pelé already was. His knee was ready for the final match of the group stage against pre-tournament favourites, the Soviet Union. And while he didn't score, he did give the assist to Vava for the second of his 2 goals in the 2-0 win. In the next 3 matches came the awakening. In the quarter-final against Wales, he scored the only goal. In the semi-final, a hat-trick. Goals at 52, 64 and 75 minutes. And in the final, a brace. 1 at 55 minutes, and the crowning glory in the 90th minute to give Brazil the World Cup, 5-2. At 17 years and 249 days, Pelé became the youngest player to play, score and win in a World Cup final. He was football's new joy. After the 5th goal, even I wanted to cheer for him, said Swedish midfielder Sigge Parling.
Everybody in Sweden, when you say Brazil, we remember 1958. And that's one thing. I was the biggest fan of Pelé. When I was a little girl, my name was Pelé. My name is Pia, but I call myself Pelé.
Pelé's place as the only man to have won 3 World Cups is so revered that it seems churlish to point out that he didn't actually play in 3 World Cup finals. After the events of 1958 and an ever-expanding silverware count back home with Santos, Pelé arrived in Chile for the 1962 World Cup as the best player in the world. The opening match against Mexico was business as usual, with a goal and an assist. But 25 minutes into the second match against Czechoslovakia, he received a pass from Garrincha, took a powerful long shot which just missed, tore his hamstring and hobbled from the World Cup stage. Garrincha shone in Pelé's absence, and the Brazilians completed back-to-back wins. Under FIFA rules, Pelé's appearance in the group stage entitled him to his place in the record books as a recipient of the Jules Rimet Trophy. With Garrincha now 32 and not fully fit after a car accident, Brazil's 1966 side was always going to be heavily reliant upon Pelé. He knew it, and so did the opposition. In those days, there were no substitutes, so if Pelé could be hurt, it was a double benefit. And in the opening match, Bulgaria was determined to stop him. 15 minutes into the first game, he scored with a superb free kick from one of the few infringements punished by the referee. The goal made Pelé the first man to score at 3 successive World Cup tournaments. But for the rest of the match, his marker, Dobromir Zhechev, was seemingly free to try and cut him down, causing one journalist to observe, "Pelé won't finish the World Cup. It's amazing he hasn't gone mad." Pelé finished the game injured and missed Brazil's second match before his return for the final group game against Portugal. His treatment was even worse. His opponent Moraes fouled him so badly, he was helped from the field and later declared he would never play in a World Cup again. Football was lucky he changed his mind. As the England team was parading around Wembley after its win in the 1966 World Cup, all Pelé could think about was the injustice of the constant harassment and unsporting attention he had encountered over the last 2 tournaments. He headed back to the comfort of Santos, and it would be more than 2 years before he played another match for Brazil. When he was asked to play in the 1969 World Cup qualifying matches for the 1970 tournament in Mexico, he initially declined. But with all the other stars from the 58 and 62 World Cup winning teams retired, like Garrincha, Vava, Zito and Didi, Brazil was desperate for the experience of Pelé to complement a fresh group of exciting players. Meanwhile, even bigger things were happening behind the scenes. Pelé had not been the only big name to have been targeted with little protection from referees in England. and FIFA determined that the ugly, undisciplined play of 1962 and 66 should not be repeated. He agreed to return, scoring 6 goals in 6 qualifying matches. In late 1969 against Vasco da Gama, Pelé scored one of the more straightforward goals in his club career. A foul, a converted penalty, but it was his 1000th goal, and unleashed the type of wild celebrations that would characterize the final period of his career. 1970 would mark a glorious beginning of a glorious end to his career, and he headed to Mexico for his 4th and final World Cup. FIFA had stuck to its vow that referees would take a harder line and support the most attractive players in Mexico. And that's the way it worked out when Pelé made his return and scored in Brazil's 4-1 win over Czechoslovakia in the first match. The 1970 tournament is regarded as one of the most attacking and entertaining of all World Cups. Gerd Muller's 10 goals, 7 from Pelé's fellow forward wizard Jairzinho, and other standout performances from big names like Franz Beckenbauer and Bobby Charlton ensured the first World Cup televised in colour would provide excitement the world over. Brazil swept the tournament, scoring 19 goals. The final was one-sided, Pelé opening the scoring 18 minutes in, and although the Italians drew level in the first half, they were completely overrun in the second. Pelé's 4 goals and 5 assists would see him retrospectively named player of the tournament. His partnership with Jairzinho, the epitome of the beautiful game. And with the midfield magicians Gerson and Rivellino, and the outstanding defender and captain Carlos Alberto, Brazil's 1970 lineup became almost universally rated the greatest winning World Cup team ever. His historic 3rd World Cup victory saw the end of Pelé the player and the birth of Pelé the legend. Pelé's transition into football royalty and a much-loved ambassador for the game continues after the break. After becoming the first and still the only player to win 3 World Cups, Pelé was presented with a replica of the Jules Rimet trophy and was king wherever he went. In July 1971, his international career ended with 2 friendlies against Austria and Yugoslavia, although he played on with Santos until 1974. Then came one of his greatest contributions to the game, retracting his retirement in 1975 to virtually single-handedly popularize soccer in the United States, with 2.5 seasons with the New York Cosmos. He had been coaxed out of retirement in Brazil by a $1.4 million a season contract. Huge money for a sportsman in the 1970s.
Sometimes I got very upset because I played 25 years with Santos. We won the World Cup. I scored a lot of goals, more than 1,000 goals. And every place where I arrived, the people say, Pelé, what happened with the Cosmos? I say, it's a magic, you know, unbelievable.
The Cosmos changed the sporting landscape in the US, luring Franz Beckenbauer and other superstars from Europe. For the first time, soccer, as it is known in the US, was a major player, as the crowds came to Yankee Stadium. While modern stars like David Beckham, Raul, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic have been credited for popularizing Major League Soccer, it was Pelé who laid the foundations. In 1977, Pelé closed out his career in an emotional exhibition match between Santos and the Cosmos at Giant Stadium in front of an enormous crowd.
Now, if you remember, when I say goodbye in New York with the New York Cosmos, to thank God and to ask to the people, repeat with me, love, love, love. Then I want to thank you for the beautiful welcome. And can you repeat with me 3 times? Love, love, and love. That's what I need. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Married 3 times and father of 6 children, he moved into the football afterlife, but never lost his celebrity. 1981 saw the release of his sports drama Escape to Victory, featuring the Brazilian Wiz alongside none other than Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine. Pelé pleasantly surprised the critics that expected little of an athlete trying to prove himself on the big screen. Life after football saw Pelé shift focus to ambassadorial work, providing his inspiring voice and likeness to various organizations in and outside football. Most notable were his humanitarian contributions with UNICEF.
I always seek to pass on to the children, to the future generation, the same thing I seek to pass on to my children. A lot of times, young people get lost because it's a thing that brings a lot of fame, a lot of money. But the most important thing in life is to be good with yourself, to strike a good balance with yourself.
And as the years went on, Pelé was often called upon to make appearances as a FIFA ambassador and was regularly asked to give his opinions on everything to do with the game, from the Brazilian national team to the next Pelé. Perhaps most frequently, Pelé was asked to weigh in on the merits of the modern generation's 2 foremost players, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi.
If I have to decide in my team, I like both.
As the decades have passed, Pelé's own place in the game, once unquestionably the greatest of all time, has come under increased scrutiny. Messi and Ronaldo continue to prompt discussion over whether they belong in the conversation. But for so long, it was a two-way debate between Pelé and Argentine superstar Diego Maradona. FIFA itself named its Player of the Century in 2000, and Pelé won easily in a vote of a grand jury and FIFA magazine readers, with 72.75% of the first votes, ahead of Di Stefano at 9.75% and Maradona at 6%. In a separate online poll of the public that only served to confuse the case, Maradona won with 53.6% of the first votes ahead of Pelé's 18.53%. And FIFA ended up handing out 2 awards to calm the waters. The International Federation of Football History and Statistics named Pelé Football Player of the Century, and he was named at the Golden Foot Awards in Monte Carlo in 2012 as the best ever. But the most relevant accolades remain those of his peers in the years he was in his prime. The French striker Just Fontaine scored 13 goals in Pelé's first World Cup tournament of 1958. His record still stands, but this is what he said. "When I saw Pelé play, it made me feel I should hang up my boots." The late 50s, with Pelé still in his teens, was an era where Ferenc Puskás and Alfredo Di Stefano were immortalizing Real Madrid in club football. This is what Puskás said. "The greatest player in history was Di Stefano. I refuse to classify Pelé as a player. He was above that." And the last word to the legend credited with changing the game in the post-Pelé era, Johan Cruyff. Pelé was the only footballer who surpassed the boundaries of logic. When the gods of the game bow to another, it leaves just one man standing. Pelé the King. And his impact would continue to be lauded into his final years. Tributes flow as the world honours a king. In and out of hospital, the greatest footballer of the 20th century battled his declining years with grace and courage. But 2 days before the end of 2022, his fight ended at the Albert Einstein Hospital in Sao Paulo. Pelé, Ray, the King, was 82. As news of his passing spread, Rio's Christ the Redeemer statue was lit in Brazil's green and yellow. His death was announced by his daughter, Kelly Nascimento, in stirring social media posts, which drew upon his famous mantra: love, love, and love forever. The media vigil outside the hospital in Sao Paulo. The Maracanã Stadium in Rio lit in yellow. The tribute at Wembley Stadium. The flags waving. And the tears of fans around the world demonstrated sport's capacity to unite.
Pelé the King. When you're playing on the street, you're always Pelé, you know? For me, I will always carry Pelé in my heart for how he inspired generations, and long live the King.
The greats of the world game across the generations all sent messages. Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe, and from Pelé's own time, Franz Beckenbauer. Said Neymar, before Pelé, 10 was just a number. Pelé, the perfect 10, embodied Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game.
If I have to repeat everything, you know, I will do everything the same. I'm very happy with God gave it to me.